Are we rolling? Yes, we are. What's up, guys? It's McKinley Crain here, and today I'm going to be doing my spoiler-free movie review of the movie that I saw last Friday. I watched it digitally, of course, because why not? Which was the new 2021 comedy animated and live-action comedy film. It's like a mashup, which was Tom and Jerry, the 2021 version, of course. Anyway, so this movie stars Tom and Jerry as Tom and Jerry. They don't have voice actors because they don't say anything in this movie. And it also stars Chloe Grace Moretz as Kayla. And Kayla is a young woman who sneaks into, basically like tricks somebody into like giving basically handing over their like job spot to her as like, you know, a hotel manager or whatever. So basically she kind of cheats her way into like being a hotel manager or whatever. And before I get any more into the plot, this movie was actually way better than I expected it to be. I expected it to be okay. I just didn't expect it to be good, if you know what I mean. I didn't expect it to be bad. I just didn't expect it to be good either. But it was good, surprisingly. I enjoyed it. It's not a great movie. But it is a good movie. You know, it had like most of everything in this movie was good. It had a few great elements in there too. A few like okay elements, and even some bad stuff in there too. But the bad stuff didn't really affect the movie much, and I'll get into that in a minute. Anyway, so this is a very fun film. It's a very fun movie. It's enjoyable. It's very enjoyable. It's you know, it's very wacky. It's very silly. It's got like, you know, the classic Tom and Jerry, like, you know, hijinks, like where they're like whacking each other and stuff. And you know, it lives up to its source material. And it's got like, you know, it's got like a whole bunch of like classic Tom and Jerry characters in it, like Tom and Jerry, and you know the gray bulldog, who I can't ever remember his name, whose name I can't ever remember. Yeah, it pays, like, you know, it pays its respect to, you know, its source material. And let's move on to its like, you know, its animation. So this is basically a live action mashup with, like, you know, animation. Like, basically all the animals in this movie are animated, but all the humans are not. And the animation is mostly good. Sometimes it's okay, and then there are some parts of this movie where the animation is just bad. Like, you know, that doesn't happen very much in this movie, though. You know, there are only like a few parts in this movie where, like, you know, the animation's bad. When it is bad, it's bad, man. You know, there's one animated character in this movie in particular who, like, every time I see this character on screen, I'm just like, oh my gosh, he is so poorly animated. Like, there was only like one little 0.5 second shot of this character. This character's not in the movie for very much. Anyway, this is very long. Anyway, this is just a minor character I'm talking about, and you'll probably know who I'm talking about if you see the movie. And like, there's like, so back on the topic of the second of animation or whatever I was talking about. So there's like a 0.5 second shot of this character, that is actually decent, has decent animation. And I'm not going to say which character this is because I don't even know the character's name. Alright, fine, I'm just going to say it. It's one of the cats. I don't know his name, but it's like one of the cats from this movie. It's like one of the a-hole cats from this movie that are jerks towards like Tom and Jerry and stuff. It's one of those. I don't know his name, but it's one of the cats. One of the cats is like very poorly animated. Tom, like, speaking of like poorly animated cats in this movie, Tom is, most of Tom's animation like looks good. There's like a 1 second shot of scene in this movie, like part of this movie where his animation, the animation on Tom looks okay, but not good. And then there's like a 3 second scene in this movie when Tom is walking in a hotel, and the animation looks really bad and lifeless. It literally looks like they didn't even finish the animation. It's like they took the animation for that 3 second scene, just like kind of did a lot, made some progress on it, but it looks bad for like about 3 seconds. It looks pretty bad in that scene. It looks lifeless. It looks like the animation looks like it has like no soul at all, and of course it technically doesn't because it's animation, but you know what I'm saying. Tom looks like he has no soul at all in that 3 second scene. But other than those two, that bad scene, that poorly animated 3 second scene of Tom, and that 1 second, averagely animated scene with Tom. Tom's animation is good. Jerry's animation is always good. The animation on Jerry is always good. There were no problems with, Jerry's animation. The Gray Bulldog, not the Gray Bulldog. Is he a bulldog, or is he a pit bull, or is he some kind of terrier? I can't remember right now. I've seen this character so many times in so many Tom and Jerry cartoons as a younger child or whatever, and I still can't remember this dog's name. I think it's Butch or something. Can't remember anyway. But so the gray dog, let's just call him the big gray dog. The big gray dog in this movie is mostly is like Tom. It's like most of the time his animation is good, but there's like 1-2 second scene where it's like I think it's like during his introduction scene actually, where he's walking and it shows it just zooms up on his face and it looks lifeless AF. The animation looks bad in that little 2 second scene with Butch the dog or whatever his name is, the great big dog. I don't know. The animation looks bad and lifeless in that scene. But other than that scene, the animation on the big gray dog is pretty good, and those are my only issues with the animation. The rest of the animation in this movie is good. Anyway, let's talk about the acting now. The acting is it's mostly good. It's mostly good. There's like only like I think one instance of some okay acting like mixed in there, like not good acting but not bad acting mixed in there, and there's there's actually a little bit of great acting in this movie. It's only for a little bit, but like there's some great acting in this movie, specifically from Chloe Grace Moretz. Well, especially from Chloe Grace Moretz. Other characters have their moments too, but Chloe Grace Moretz gave the best performance in this movie. And yeah, so the humor. Okay, so not the humor. The acting is good. Um, the humor is good. A lot of it's just classic Tom and Jerry humor, which works very well. There's the humor is all good except for like a couple instances of okay humor like mixed in there. It's you know what I'm saying, not good humor but not bad humor. Oh, and by the way, back on the topic of the animation doesn't really the bad animation that is in this movie, even though there's not a lot of bad animation in this movie. Overall this movie has good animation, and most of the animation is good. Well, it doesn't really affect anything. This movie's animation doesn't really affect the story or anything, so it doesn't hurt the movie at all when there is some bad animation. Anyway, the story is good. I like the ending, and I like the beginning, and I liked every part of this movie. I thought the story was very good. I think that the creators of this movie did like a good job of balancing, the Tom and Jerry part of the storyline, like where they're just fighting each other and whacking each other, like classic Tom and Jerry. They did a good job of mixing that with like these new characters' stories, like these human characters' stories. You know what I'm saying? Tom and Jerry, are good in this movie. They're even great in this movie sometimes. Like, a few of their fight scenes are great. But, most of them are just good. But, that's not a bad thing. So, anyway, this movie isn't always, the most logical or the most realistic at times. Like, there's legit a scene where it was Jerry. There's legit a scene where, Jerry grabs a pair of, like, metal scissors, completely metal. There's, like, no plastic, no plastic around the bottom or anything, and cuts a power line that has Tom on it, that, like, Tom is walking across to try to electrocute Tom or whatever, and Jerry just cuts the electrical, the electrical wire, no, the power line. That's the word I'm looking for. So Jerry legit cuts the power line with metal scissors, completely metal scissors. And if you don't know, metal is pretty much the number one, conductor of electricity. So if this were realistic, which it's not, because it's Tom and Jerry, and it's not realistic in the first place. It's never realistic. It's never been realistic. So, which is why it doesn't hurt the movie at all. I'm just putting this out there. So basically, back on the subject of what was going on in the movie. He cut the power line with metal scissors. So he should have gotten electrocuted because, like I said, metal is like the conductor of the biggest conductor of electricity. So if this were realistic, Jerry, even though he's a mouse, and a mouse wouldn't be doing this anyway because mice are dumb. okay, let's just say if a human were doing this, to be as realistic as possible, if a human were actually to do this, they wouldn't even get halfway through with that before they got electrocuted. Like, they would just get electrocuted. They get fried. But, you know, that doesn't happen to Jerry. Because, you know, laws of science don't apply to this movie. And, of course they don't. It's a Tom and Jerry movie. When do the laws of science or the laws of physics ever apply to Tom and Jerry? It's one of, like, the most unrealistic cartoons ever. And, you know, doesn't aim to be realistic at all. So, you know, the illogical stuff in this movie and unrealistic stuff in this movie doesn't hurt the movie at all. Anyway, this movie is good, it's just not great. You know, a lot of the characters have good chemistry. This movie is just, it's a good movie, it's just not a great movie. But it is a very satisfying and fun time. I had a lot more fun watching this movie than I expected to be having when I watched this movie. Well, than I expected to have when I watched this movie. Well, before I watched this movie, I didn't expect to have, you know, as much fun as I did. But, you know, when I was watching the movie, I had a lot of fun. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm going to give Tom and Jerry, the 2021 film, of course, not the 90s one, an 80% out of 100%, which is the equivalent of an A, not an A minus, a B minus. Like, subscribe, join the notification squad. I will return.